Hi, welcome to Old Guys Gentlemen Flex Fountain Pens, episode number 24. And today I'm going to be reviewing a pen that I got recently from Greg Manuskin, who's I think one of the best nib grinders and one of the very few nib retippers. He puts tips on nibs. Guys out there. And he sells pens at a really reasonable cost. And I think he doesn't refurbish the bodies that much, if at all, but I think he does put the nibs in pretty good shape. So anyhow, this is a Wahl Eversharp Doric, and I had to read through some of the history on it. And again, Richard Binder's site, he has a profiles page of pens, is a very good resource for finding out the history of the pens that you've got. And what I found out is this is the first gen. It was made from celluloid, which historically has a problem with breaking down over time. It kind of crystallizes, hazes, and then eventually falls apart. This one is in pretty good shape, and I'll talk more about that later. There was one thing I had to fix, and that's worked out pretty well. Anyhow, it's a beautiful pen. Let's see if I can get a little bit better light on here. It's faceted, which makes it fascinating. Sorry, I just had to say that. I ended up doing a lot of sanding and polishing on this thing. There was a crack right in here somewhere. It's hard to see. Let's see if I can. It's hard to clean up the nibs after I do my fix. There's part of the crack right there. So you can kind of barely see it. It was more open than that before, and you could actually, with the magnifying scope that I've got, you could look inside there and it looked like a fissure in the Arctic with all sorts of bumpy things on the inside. And what I ended up doing was using some old pen parts that I filed down to create a kind of celluloid dust, mixed it up with MEK. However, since then I found out that there's a better solvent. I forgot the name of it. It's like ethyl acetate, maybe. Anyhow, I'll put that on the screen. And you mix the two together, you get kind of a goo, and then you kind of over-apply it. And with the MEK, anyhow, you're supposed to let it sit for weeks, and I never have the patience for that. What happens is it really fuses any crack that exists, and I think it stops cracks from progressing, at least in that particular area. And then I can sand it over. But the next time, I think I'll use this acetate stuff and give it a little bit longer time. The worst that's going to happen is where the crack is, it may indent a little bit there, and then if I feel like it, I can go back and fill it again. It's got nice gold trim on it. It's got a pretty nib that right now is covered in green ink. I think this is my Edelstein Pelican ink. But it's a pretty nib. The number 3, that's 14 karat. Yeah, just some really nice work on here. One of the problems I had with polishing this thing up is, well, actually two problems. One is there are facets on the end here, and I could not figure out how to sand each one of those individually to keep the faceted look, so that's kind of worn away. It's much easier to do on these flat surfaces, although a little bit of a pain in the butt because you have to have like a jeweler's steel, then you put sandpaper on it and you go and do each facet as you work your way through the grits. I was really lucky to get a rim on a band here that has got no cracks in it. It's helped a lot by this gold band, gold filled, I believe. The second generation, which has a much cooler design than this, I think, and this is pretty beautiful, the band actually comes down to the lip and protects the whole area there. But anyhow, after I had done all this area and got it to this nice shiny, I like shiny things, look, I went to put this thing on, and the lip went all the way down to here and then stopped. And at first I thought it was hung up on this, but it's actually, there's a, you probably can't see it, but there's a stop in there that basically stops this so that the nib doesn't get crushed up against the bottom when you're putting this together. So what I had to do is I probably could go back and put some of that powdered celluloid and solvent together and make it a little thicker in here. I did a kind of a shortcut thing using shellac, and that seems to work pretty well. So it went from going all the way down here and being absolutely loose, unusable in a posted condition, to stopping at a nice condition, and then it stays firm on there. As far as the dimension on this thing, the posted length is 15.6. The size of this pen just feels perfect for me. A nice little overhang, nice weight balance. Without the post, I could write like this, but it's just, I really like the extra length in there. Well, you can see I've got some ink in the cap. That's why I've got these spots on here. More about it. So the length of this is uncapped is 12 centimeters, and capped it's 13.4 centimeters. So I think that's a pretty good length. The section diameter is a very comfortable, 0.85, maybe 0.9. I'll tend to hold it at the back end of the section, and the barrel's about 1.1. So again, I like that. I know I don't like really skinny pens because you end up kind of cramping your hand on the pen. I never thought I'd like this Jinhao pen because of how much fatter it is, but I actually like writing with fat pens. Took me a while to figure that out. It has a really nice extra fine. Let's see if we can get closer. It's got a really nice extra fine, and if you go with a lighter hand, you get it close to triple extra fine. It goes to 3 broad plus, and it's nice and flexy. It's funny, getting back to Greg Manuskin, who I've bought several pens from now, and I'll continue to buy in the future. He gets kind of flowery in his language for describing the pens, and this one was described as a wet noodle. And I know when I buy it that I'm not necessarily, all that really means is it's going to have a nice flex to it. And I have other pens that are wet noodles, and I know that's a subjective term, but you can feel it. And this one takes a little bit of pressure to get a spread. And so I'd actually call it more like somewhere in between a semi-flex and a full flex. You get more than enough line variation, and actually it's kind of nice to have it just a little bit stiffer so you don't end up with a bunch of, I'm exaggerating here, but a bunch of jagginess to something while you're, so it's a kind of a nice smooth, well, this is the other thing. I don't know if he did any smoothing or it came like this, but I have to put a little bit more pressure than normal to do these things, but it's nice and smooth. It's not really digging into the paper. So I like the flex on this, but it's not a wet noodle. So the good things about it, it's a beautiful pen, nice, comfortable to hold, good flex. And in between kind of questionable and bad, this is made out of celluloid, and at least the versions of celluloid made in the 1930s, I don't know if I said that before, this because of the color, which is cashmere, it was in use between 1931 and 35. So a lot of these pens, if they've been left out in the sun or too much moisture or some other things that help break down the celluloid, that they'll be kind of crazed at the top. That's just ink up there right now. There will be more cracks, not necessarily all the way through, but it generally just kind of comes apart. So that will always be the case with this pen. What I plan to do is keep it out of sunlight, keep it in decent humidity, low humidity. And I also plan to keep it waxed. No one said that this is a good thing to do, but it was recommended by one of the pen collectors. It's used in museums to protect and make more timeless the items, the antiques that are like in museums and stuff. Hopefully that'll protect it a little bit from the elements, and it'll still be a beautiful pen when I pass. So I've done enough talking. Let me do some Spencerian letters. Uh-oh. Bad planning. Very controllable, nice line variation. Inexperienced hand. But I really like it. I think I'm going to be keeping this one, and I'm definitely going to be, in the future, looking for a Generation 2 of this pen. So I hope you got some value out of that. And until next time, thank you.